Welcome everyone to a new update by the International Commission of Jurists on how the COVID-19 pandemics is having an impact on our human rights and the rule of law worldwide. Today, I'm pleased to have with us a partner and a committed human rights lawyer from France, is Maître Zia Oloumi, who some of you may have recognized also for certain movies, but particularly he is a lawyer who has been at the forefront of the struggle also for recognizing the principle of fraternity in the French Constitution and of many human rights battles. So, Zia, it's a pleasure to have you with us. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So, we have been exploring the situation in certain countries, including in the CIS, and this crisis has impacted countries very differently. And what was the impact of this pandemic in France?
So, first of all, that's not the first time we have the disease like that. In 60s, we had like that 35,000 people, 35,000 deaths in France. But that's the first time we have a response like that from the authorities. Impact of about the rules of law here in France. So basically, what's happened in France is that mainly from 16th of March, what's happening in France was that the French authorities ordered a large scale of lockdown here in France, and saying to any people to go to their house. So that was the first time we had that. Sometimes even for the terrorist attack in France, we had only for a few hours. But now that was not for a few days, that was for a few months, a few weeks and a few months. So that was really the first time that we were in a situation of what the president says, the war situation. Okay, so that was really the first time, and that was an impact, very, very important economic impact. That means, for example, for people that were stopped to go to their job. That was the first situation, so that's very important. And the only economic activities we had that was for food. Retailers, for example, even the administration, even the justice, everything were locked down. So that was really the first time, and I think that was a very impressive for people. After 1 day, 2 days, 1 week, that's like funny. But after 1 week, that was not funny, because every people think about the reality of the thing. And that, for example, for people who went for the manifestation or like that was stopped. So that was really the first time in France that we had this kind of fears about the disease, for example. And I mean, really the first day and the first week, that was somehow difficult. But after that was more, because for example, for economic activities like hotels and all, that was very, very difficult. And we will see what will happen about the economics, but that's sometimes economic and human rights there is a link between. So when you have difficulties in economic, you will see that in terms of human rights, there is a problem too. We will see that probably in 1, 2, or 3 months what will happen. But really, that was difficult, because that was the first time we will see that.
And in France, as we have seen, it's been one of the countries, like Italy, that really has introduced a quite strong form of lockdown. And how has that impacted the work of lawyers, for instance, also in the very sensitive area, on pretrial detention, representing clients in urgent situation? What's been the impact on the work of lawyers and on courts, on access to courts?
Yeah, that was very difficult. First of all, for people who were in custody, for example, we didn't have access to them. So they said that you are not allowed to go to prison because that's even dangerous for them. So that was and that takes probably 1 month or more than 1 month to have access to them with phone calls, and that seems that we were in like not in 21st century.
Mm-hmm.
For France, that was the first time I saw that we are like uh, third world country about that. Some other countries like Sweden or others have some, or even Germany, they did different. But in France, they said only you don't have access, and that's it. And that was the first time we saw that, because the access to the client for lawyers, that's very important. Secondly, we had, for example, some which we call comparution immédiate, which is for people that they did something and they will go immediately to the court. They have the right to have a lawyer, okay? And at the beginning, we didn't have any, a mask or all that, because we didn't have access to them. And the authorities said that these masks are only for health agents and only for them. So we didn't have access to them. So a lot of lawyers say that it's not possible for them to go to at the beginning to go to see their clients, because they don't have these masks. And that means then the clients didn't have access to the lawyers, and that was very important too. We wait for 1 month. After 1 month, they said that's possible. The law says that's possible for lawyers to have their clients even in the with the police, not in jail, okay, with the police, on the base of phone calls or video conference calls. But the police station doesn't have the materials for that. So that means effectively they didn't have access to the lawyers, because that was not possible even to do that by phones or by video conferences. So even that was very important in terms of the human rights for these kind of people, and that was even really the first time we saw that. And also for a person who, for a person who was guilty of, from the court, they went to the jail, and they maintained them, for longer time than before, and that is, that was the first time too. And also we can say that for other kind of violence, for example, or for our clients, that was difficult for us to access to the justice. The administration of the justice was locked down too. So
Yeah.
the only thing we had that was for about 1 or 2 months, only for criminal cases, and even criminal cases, they said that will postpone for more than 1 month, and people could wait in jail for their trial. So that was really, I think, again, that was the first time we had this kind of response, and I saw that that's a very good. If we were not a democratic country, and if that was a dictatorship, then the this kind of disease is better than a terrorist attack. So because for the first time we saw that our system doesn't work exactly as before, and for some people who are vulnerable, this kind of people doesn't have access to minimum rights.
Yeah, it's impressive how the legal system basically also in Western countries is that they basically blocked, and they couldn't conceive at the beginning that there are certain essential services of justice that had to be fulfilled, because otherwise 2 months more in jail without judicial review, and that's a hell of a long time.
In other countries, if that's in other countries, we saw that, we said, oh, it's not a human rights country, that was really the first time. And I think some fellows say that we don't have to talk about that, but we have to talk, because it's very important. That's at the emergency moment that we saw if we have a good system, even justice services or not. And I think that's what the COVID pandemic shows, is that we have a lot to do about that. Still a lot in France.
Yeah, it's really important. Now probably the Ministry of Justice should actually start working and prepare a situation in which access to justice may be provided also in all situations of pandemics, because it has revealed that certain countries were definitely behind. And Zia, you say you're a famous lawyer, you've been involved in many cases of migration, in particular, in a sense, in the south of France. You are at the origin of the famous case of Cédric Herrou with the Principe de Fraternité, which actually has defeated and defied this solidarity criminalization that is going throughout Europe. In your opinions, in your experiences, what's been the situation of migrants, refugees in this period, in a sense, in period of pandemics, in capacity to access justice and their rights in France?
Yeah, that is very important to see what's happened about them, because we have three kind of migrant, if you want. First of all, that's migrant who ask for asylum, migrant who are legal in France, and migrant who are not legal in France. And really, we saw what's happened for the migrants. That was very that was again the first time we saw that, because the border, they closed the border. First of all, that means from Italy, and that was the same thing for Italy and France. Even they closed the border, they have the right to ask for asylum. And what we saw was that that was not possible for them to ask for asylum. And before the pandemic, we had association, people watching for the human rights observer from associations and others. They were there, and when there was a problem, they asked for lawyers, assistants, and all that. But with the pandemic, that was not possible to have observers. And when you don't have any person who works in the police practice, that means that's finished. They could do what they want. And we saw some cases now that people saying for asylum, and the police said, no asylum here, go back. And this is exactly the violation of Dublin law and even Schengen. That was important for first of all, and even for asylum seekers who were in France, that was not possible for them to have access to the minimum legal amount they should have, and even the house and all that, because about more than 1 month, about 2 months, the administration was closed in Paris, for example. So they went to the court, and that was the Supreme Court here in France, Conseil d'État, who says that you have to reopen for them. So even that was difficult, and we wait for 1-2 months to give them the access the right they have. And for the other part, which is for non-legal migrants here in France, that was also difficult, because these persons work every day, okay, and without having a situation permitting them to have an insurance for a revenue like that, like an insurance, and for these people that was very difficult, because suddenly they didn't have the revenue, so that was difficult. And even for people who have the right to stay here, for example, they are have a marriage with the French people, or they are still they have a disease or something like that. That was not possible to ask for their rights because the administration were closed. So all these situations, and even for people who were legal here in France, that was difficult, because that was not possible for them to go back to their country, because the administration is even closed. And even if you have the right to take a plane to go to your country, for example, that was not possible, because the papers you have here in France, that's only valid for 3 months, for example.
Yeah.
And if that was finished, you don't have any administration allowing you to have another paper. So even then, I saw that in France we have a lot to do, even in terms of I don't know, sending papers, for example. That's very simple to do, to send an extension validity of the title. Here in France, that was possible, and we have a huge some administration in Paris or in Nice or in other parts of France that doesn't work. So that was even a problem. And when you have, when you have French people or immigrant with family here, you can always ask for help from them. But if you don't have this, and you are a single person working here, for example, and sending money to your family or other countries, then you saw that will stop, and that's very important in terms of problems for these guys here in France. Also, I think for the migrant, that's here in France we say that what's the name? The défenseur des droits, which is a person who is in charge to see in France what happened about in terms of human rights. And this guy says I think 1 year before, he says that in the report, that's very important in terms of human rights. What's happened to migrants? Because if everything is okay, that means we have a very good system. And here in France, I saw, unfortunately, that we have again a lot to do in terms of human rights and protection of human rights.
And this brings me actually exactly to my last question, because our time is almost over. But exactly, what do you think we can do as lawyers? In a sense, how can we use the law, courts, and human rights to actually be able to change a bit the situation? Because it's true that what this pandemic has showed is Western countries, particularly everywhere, Western countries, Southern countries, but what we see in Europe is that it was unexpected. We will be so unprepared to face all the other facets of the emergency, let alone the health one, that fall out from this emergency. So what do you think can a human rights lawyer do?
Oh, I think there's two two kind of things. First of all, as lawyers, so we have to go before the court again and again, even the court are not in their part. We have to do. We have to go take action against the government, against the other authorities, and go before the court. That's what we did in some cases, but we will continue to do that. We have already now cases from asylum seekers in the border of France with a baby, 5 years baby with a disease. So we are waiting for the Conseil d'État decision of the High Court. And even as we have to go through the advocacy, like an advocate, and ask about more rights. Sometimes it's not useful to even go, for some, I don't know. For example, what's happened a few days, just for robbery, okay, going to the court. If the court it's not, if the guy hasn't have an access to a lawyer, why bring him to the court now? Why didn't it's not possible to wait for 2 or 3 months and do that after? And if we have to change our mind about how to deal with situation in the term of when we are in emergency circumstances. So we have to think about that. And I'm not really sure that anybody in France, I'm talking about France, about France and French authorities. I'm not sure that the government now is thinking about that. And the problem about you talk about the fraternity principle in France. The fraternity principle is only in France. In Europe, we have solidarity, which is not exactly the same. But we, after less than 2 years before the decision, the decision of the Constitutional Court of in France, we saw that in practice we did exactly. We didn't do what we have to do in terms of fraternity. And really, for example, for a migrant, that was possible to say what they did in Portugal, or I think, I'm not sure, but probably in Spain too, to allow them for 3 months to be legal. What does that mean? That's only for 3 months. Okay, you are legal. That was possible to do that. And I'm not sure, because that's a political things in France. I think we have a lot to do, like not advocates, not lawyers, only advocates to show that when we are in emergency circumstances, we should have other kind of response than even in terms of thinking than before.
Absolutely, by ensuring the rights, we actually managed to face the other facets of these consequences. Zia Oloumi, French human rights lawyer, thank you very much for having been with us, having presented us France, and we're going to come back to you again for other updates in the future.
Thank you for your invitation.
And again, for everyone there watching, thank you very much for following us. Stay safe, and to the next update. Goodbye.
Bye.